Welcome. Once again, we join you for another exciting episode of Victory Never Sleeps. And I was talking about this in the green room, but my guest tonight has been on the show, fill-in hosting for me several times, but she hasn't been on with me since the very first episode, which was our highest viewed episode, by the way. So it is my pleasure to welcome Witan Brandy Callahan on, as the rest of AFA leadership has decided that she best represents industriousness. And that one was a pretty easy choice, and I concur wholeheartedly. So welcome, Brandi. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, and thanks for the leadership for nominating me for this.
So for folks that don't know or that are unaware, and I think the group of members that are unaware is getting much and much smaller. But for anybody else listening to this, Brandi is the reason that so many things get accomplished in the Asatru Folk Assembly in the last few years. She is the go-to for just about everybody when we need to take something from being an idea to get it actually done and to making projects happen. And she does that better than anybody else that's ever been in the Asatru Folk Assembly, and kind of sets a really high standard for the rest of us to try to keep up with. So we are all extremely better off for Brandi's industriousness. Could you tell folks, I don't know, could you define industriousness for folks that might be curious, and maybe, how you see industriousness in the AFA playing out from your point of view?
Sure. So industriousness is not just working yourself to the bone all the time. Industriousness is working to better yourself, working to better your folk, working to better your community, not just for yourself, but for your family, for your folk, and in honor of the gods. So industrious means working as hard as you can, but always remembering to not work yourself to the point where there's nothing left to give. So I have found out since my 20s until now that I used to equate industriousness with working as hard as I can and going as fast as I could. I've learned my lessons in that over the years. So being in my 40s now, I see it more as being efficient, work smarter, not harder. You get things done a lot better that way. There's less mistakes. There's less things that you have to redo. You have a lot more time to plan and take the big picture into account rather than just rushing forward as fast as you can. But it's working for the betterment of something. It's not just working 60 hours a week so you can pay your bills and have a house over your head. It's working towards a goal. So that's what I believe industrious truly means, is working towards a goal that betters yourself and betters your folk and honors the gods as well.
I think that's an important qualifier on industriousness, especially the kind of industriousness that we celebrate as a virtue it's about accomplishment, not just work at something. Mm-hmm. And you're one of the best at talking about this. I think this is something you talk about frequently in terms of Hoftoller and donations, but really and truly it's about time management. You're devoting time to something and efficiently devoting your time to achieve a payoff, to achieve some kind of result that is important to you. Mm-hmm. is one of the keys to industriousness. There's a lot of people that spend a lot of time working at stuff and aren't necessarily getting a lot accomplished with all that effort.
And there's a really popular internet meme that says you're not just meant to pay bills and die. So you're not meant to just work yourself to death for somebody else to have nothing to leave for your children. Industriousness as a virtue means that you're going to have that goal and work towards it. And that's something that's going to be passed on to the next generation, something that they can build upon. And I always tell everybody, when you're talking about the gift cycle, gifting your time to something that is an improvement for your folk, an improvement for your church, something for the gods, that's a gift. And it's a gift to your people, and it's a gift to the gods.
Absolutely. And I think that of a lot of our virtues, it's say it's a challenge is really not fair, because I don't think it's a difficult thing to do, but it's important to contextualize it into, how is it relevant to the practice of Asatru? And it's very self-apparent how it's relevant to building our church in an organizational way, or to producing a product, be that, a Hoff, be that the next class of Gothar, be that, whatever it is. But beyond that, industriousness takes ideals and puts ideals in practice in the real world. It's very easy to talk about a lot of these virtues, but without the virtue of industriousness, I think it's the most clear example of our virtues that's about putting it to practice. Going out and doing Asatru is something that we like to say. Because there's a whole lot of people for a long time that have talked about Asatru. But one of the things I'm really proud of with the AFA is that we do Asatru, and you are definitely one of the leaders in that charge. And we're, at the end of the day, we're judged not on our, intentions of things that we'd like to do, not on our plans or our thoughts, but on our actions, on how those plans, thoughts, and intentions manifest through us implementing them in the world or not.
When my day passes and the next generation comes up, the next generation's not going to care how much lore I knew, or how many books I've read, or how many classes I've taught. They're going to care about the quality of the Gothar program. They're going to care about the beauty of Baldurs House. Those are the things that are going to matter to them when I'm gone. So I always try to keep that in mind. It's not always about me. It's what I'm leaving behind.
Absolutely. We have some questions lining up. King of Cheese got in first today. Matt, Brandi, good to see you both on tonight. Brandi definitely fits. How are you both doing tonight? Brandi, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Tony. And I just want to say that I'm so glad that you are here every week. You are definitely one of my favorite people. It's always been a pleasure talking to you. And I'm really, really glad that I got to meet you this summer. And I hope I get to see you again very soon.
Yeah, it's awesome to have, and same with a lot of our folks in the chat. I look at the people who are listening every week, and we get a lot of people in the replays and a lot of people over time. We get a tremendous amount of good feedback on this program, and I appreciate that a lot. I'm glad so many people are listening to me sit here and talk, and I'm even more glad that a lot of folks are getting something out of it and enjoy it. I'm glad for that. But we've got some super duper regulars on here that, I see every single week, and I get to talk to and are asking questions every single week. And I really look forward to that. I think that's awesome, and I appreciate you guys. And Tony, I'm doing great. A little bit antsy because it's one of those okay. For folks that don't know, this weekend is Charming of the Plow at Njordshof in White Springs, Florida. Folks that are within driving distance, you guys still got time if it's something you want to attend. Please reach out to your folk builder. They can get you set up if you'd like to be there. But it's across the country for us, so I am flying out there tomorrow afternoon. And for the first time in 2 years, I'm bringing my wife and my daughter with me. So the travel experience is made a bit more hectic, but every time I'm at one of these things and I don't have my family with me, something's missing. So it's going to be really nice get to show them off to folks that haven't met them or haven't seen them in a while, and also get to show off Njordshof to my wife and my daughter. They haven't seen it yet. So I'm excited about that. A little bit antsy. I'm going to be in that, hurry up and wait phase until we board the plane tomorrow. But thanks for asking. Next thing is from Trent. Witan Brandy, what is your trick for staying so motivated, even though you manage dozens of projects at a time?
I'm not happy unless I'm busy. So a lot of people deal with stress in a lot of different ways, whether that's stress at home or emotional stress or mental stress, stress at work, stress at family. I deal with stress by working, to be honest. As healthy or unhealthy as that is, it's if I'm productive, I feel like I am in control of something. So if something's going on and I know that there's nothing I can do about it but worry, rather than sitting there and worrying or, drowning myself in a bag of, Cheetos or Oreos or maybe a case of beer, I work instead. So that's what I do. I take all of that time that I could be worrying about something and I do something else with it, because there's no point in worrying about what you can't change. What's going to happen is going to happen. So rather than drive myself crazy worrying about what might be, I start working on something that I know will be. So that's my motivation for that.
That's refreshingly honest. I think that a lot of the time folk don't see that or don't realize that that's what goes into stuff. And this is more advice, I guess, than anything else. But when you find yourself stressed about something or feeling unable to accomplish something or feeling powerless or feeling anything like that, grabbing a hold of the things that you do have control over and doing something productive with them is tremendously therapeutic. You made kind of an offhand comment. You don't know if it's healthy or not. I mean, that energy goes somewhere. And so often it goes to destructive things or wasted time things. To take something that's negative or that's, a stressful energy and put that into accomplishment. I think that's something everybody should learn from and aspire to. Not only does it get good stuff done for us, but it also is is arguably the most healthy way to deal with stress.
That the Hobmall says there's no point in worrying about things at night. You're just going to wake up tired with the same problems, right? So if I can't sleep because my brain won't shut off, I just pick up a notebook and write notes for something that we're working on. And by the time I have that feeling of accomplishment. I have that feeling that I've completed something, I'm in control of something, and I find that I can sleep a lot better if I just take 5-10 minutes, hash out a couple ideas, and let it go.
All right. Human Manipulation Nation asks, what's the time frame for people to move to Tennessee, and what is the location? I was hoping to seek employment now, so it will be an easy transition. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you're motivated and you're planning like that. So time frame. That's actually something I want to talk with some people, one of whom being Law Speaker Turnage here this weekend when I see him. Honestly, the time frame as far as I'm concerned is now. Can you be there by the end of the broadcast? If you can, awesome. I'm not sure what industry you're in. I'm trying not to give the exact location until we have somebody living on site, so that people don't get, needlessly stirred up until we have somebody out there on the property and have a face. It's the only reason I'm being a little bit cautious on that. About 40 minutes outside of Cookeville. So that'd be the kind of commute you're looking for. I think that's one of your best options for employment. And about an hour and a half if you're struggling for employment in Nashville. So I think those are your two closest big employment, but it really depends on what line of work you're in. If you reach out to Nick or myself on the side, we can talk to you personally about exactly where it's at if you want to tighten in on trying to find a job. But yeah, for people, it's in that northern central Tennessee area to the east of Nashville. Brandi from Steve Mundy. Brandi, I know this question can be complex, but what gives you the drive? Why does the AFA mean so much to you?
That's a good question. I talk a lot about the gift cycle. I know I kind of harp on that every time I'm on Victory Never Sleeps, but I talk a lot about the gift cycle. And my motivation is to do things and be things for my gods, but also so that my ancestors are proud of me, so that my kids are proud of me. That's my drive. I want to leave a legacy for my kids to be proud of. I want my ancestors to be proud of what I'm doing. I want my gods to take notice and be proud of what I'm doing. I want to help bring our folk home. And I want to help other people have the same connection with the Aesir that I do. And that's my drive. That's my main purpose for it. As far as why the AFA means so much to me, it's because of what the AFA has given me. I've been in a lot of other organizations and I haven't had any of them stand by me like the AFA has stood by me. Through the best of my life and through the worst of my life. There is always people there for me. And I wouldn't be doing it justice if I, in turn, was not there for the AFA.
I think there's a lot of people that may feel that or may say that, but there's a handful of people, not that surpass you in that, but that come close to equaling you in putting that into practice. And we're all so much better for it. And I think that I'm glad that you feel that way about the AFA. And I think that it's something that until you're a part of it, and even when you're a part of it, unless you actively engage it fully, it's hard to realize just how much the AFA truly is a family, and it's made up of people that care about you and care about each other and are there for each other when people are having a hard time. And shoot, when they're there for you when you're having a great time, they're there for you at all those times in between too. And it's really nice to see and to hear when that happens. And I mean, I know people will hear it and not necessarily believe it until it happens to them, but it is something that I'm super proud of with our folks in the AFA. We got the best people in the world. Nick asks, actually, before Nick, my wife made an important point in the chat room that folks that want to move to Sigerheim, that's fantastic, but you do got to be an AFA member to do that. I think that's common sense and easily understood, but every time I think something's common sense, it turns out not to be. So it's worth saying up front. Nick asks, so what happens when Brandi finds out you can do something?
Oh, Nick. When Brandi finds out that you are willing to help, I will find 1,000 different ways for you to help. And some of them are fun and some of them are not, but they are all important. And I appreciate the fact that Nick is the keeper of all the things and does all the deeds. And I appreciate him beyond measure.
So this is kind of Yeah, that's a thing. If you volunteer for something in the AFA and you mess up and you show efficiency and competence at it, we will keep throwing projects at you until you tap out. Um, we're at a we're at a unique and a kind of a special phase in the rebirth of Asatru. Um, it's we're at a point where we're growing, we're expanding at a very fast rate. We've got so much enthusiasm and so much excitement and so many dreams that we want to accomplish. And we are in a time where the average person, if they put their heart and soul into it, can make such a huge difference in our faith and for those who come after us. Um, we're at a building phase to where we have the ability to accomplish a lot of things. We're growing, but we're not yet so big to where it's hard for, your average member to relatively quickly step in and be very impactful. If this is something that you care about, something that you love, and something that you want to put your effort towards, there are a lot of ways to make that happen, and this is a really special time for that. So it's just something for people to think about. It's not just about us needing workers to get stuff done here and there. We're at a time where those seemingly mundane things can make a huge impact on our future. So yeah, it's a very special time to be part of the AFA. I think that most of us are very history minded, and I think that very often we fantasize about wishing we were in different periods of time for any number of reasons. But I fully believe that in the future there'll be people that look back to this and wish they were here at this time and wish they were here with us when we were doing the big things that we're doing. And so that's kind of cool. And you never realize what you're doing is history until it's too late. Nobody realizes it in the moment. And tremendous historical opportunities right now. So we appreciate everybody who's helping us make stuff happen. And anybody that wants to help make stuff happen, we encourage you, reach out to your folk builder. There's tons of stuff to do all the time, and we would love and appreciate the help. Sarah asks, Githya Brandy, what would you say you are most proud of out of everything you've put into motion and developed over the last couple of years?
The beauty of Baldurs House. That's what I'm most proud of. There's a lot of things that I'm proud of, and there's a lot of people that I'm proud of. I've put a lot of time in developing relationships with individuals in the AFA, and I'm very, very, very proud of who those people have become. Many of them are now leadership, and I'm very proud of them. I'm very proud of the things that they're doing. But personally, probably the beauty of the Hoff.
It's hard to talk about it on here, and it's another thing that's kind of interesting about the times that we live in, and especially when you start realizing that you're getting older, you start doing old man recollections on things. But no one would ever have any idea that you put so much work into Baldurs House, because it is so beautiful and amazing. And we are getting to a point where it's old news how it got that way. But for folks that weren't there, just so you know, when you look at Baldurs House, and I don't know the square footage or whatever to quote values on it, but it's a big, nice building. There's 2 floors. It's nice. It's on a corner lot. It's a nice piece of property. And we got it for a song. We got it for $45,000. And I haven't checked on Zillow or whatever else to see what, but I mean, I can't imagine it being less than 150,000, but that seems really, really light on its value. It was in such a broke down, decrepit state when we got it. And I say this is an assumption, but it appears that there was some folks that enjoyed their substances over much that were there beforehand, and they got a brilliant idea. They were going to turn it into a house, and they got like 2 steps into it, decided not to, and then, figured it'd be easier to turn it into a dumping ground. And yeah, it was very, very rough. And Brandi and her family and a number of really, really dedicated members just poured blood, sweat, and tears into that place to make it what it is. And it shines all the more because of it. If you guys get a chance to check out Baldurs House in Murdoch, Minnesota, you really should. A good opportunity for you to do that is at Freyfaxi this year when we've got our national event there. But I'm sure they'd love to have you any month that they're having an event there, but I'd get to see you then, and that'd be great. But if you guys can do it, yeah, you owe it to yourselves to check out Baldurs House. So Travis Bodish has thrown $10 at us on Entropy. Anybody wants to give us tips or participate in the super chat? We appreciate it. And you can do that through Entropy. And Travis gave, no, it's confusing. So Travis gave us $8. Yeah, $8. And he says, hail the AFA, hail victory. We appreciate you, Travis. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
Cody asks, Brandi, how do you balance the duties of being a Witan and the sole ordained leadership of Baldurs House?
Very carefully. No, I'm joking. I actually have an incredible leadership team here at Baldurs House District, Cody being one of them. So because I am surrounded by competent, motivated, dedicated leadership around me, it frees me up to do a lot of other things that I was doing before, and this was slipping through the cracks, and I have to stop that and do this. But my leadership around me is one of the reasons that I can do the things that I do, in all honesty. The other reason that I can accomplish so much is because my family supports what I'm doing 100%. My kids understand. My husband understands. He knows that there might be a phone call in the middle of the night. He knows that our dinner date might be interrupted by an emergency. They know that my Sundays are dedicated to teaching. So the support of the leadership around me and the support of my family, and also the support of the other Witan and the other Godar that are my mental and emotional support when things get hard. So I would definitely have to say that those are the 3 things why I can accomplish the things that I do. Even if I'm the only ordained Godar in the district right now, those around me elevate me to the point where I can do more and be more because they can pick up a lot of the slack.
It's very important at any level of leadership or volunteerism within the AFA that your family is supportive and helpful. That makes all the difference in the world. And it's cool that you have that. And it's something that I certainly wish for all our people that step up, because it really makes life a lot easier when everybody's pulling towards the same thing, when forces are working together instead of having to be divided. Witan Callahan, do you have Irish ancestry? Always a pleasure to see you here. Hail.
I am mostly German, and you can tell by my face, mostly German. It's an inside joke. I'll let Matt explain that if he wants to. But yes, I do have Irish ancestry. I have ancestry in Scotland, Ireland, the Netherlands, and Germany. Primarily German, though.
See, the Celt comes out on this program because man, you get some candid shots, and we always joke that Brandy's looking particularly German because whenever she looks stern and grumpy, that's kind of the running joke on that.
Not angry, I'm German.
When I got to get a different website picture from her, I got to tell her to look less German. So let's get some more good we got more questions popping up. I was going to say we're running low on the questions, but that's fine. Me and Brandi have stuff to talk to y'all about either way. Next question from Travis. Witan Callahan, what brought you to Asatru? And what did the road to Witan look like for you?
Well, I have very supportive family that taught me a lot about the spirituality that I'm in right now. So Asatru really was just a natural fit for me. As far as, and I know I've told this story before, I finally found my way home to the AFA in 2018, I think it was. 2018, the end of 2018, and I was asked if I would consider folk building in January of 2020. I was asked if I would be a folk builder. And I jumped on it because I wanted a way that I could be more helpful. I was already working with folk builder Jessica Lambert and the Alshira Godi with the start of a youth program at that point. And I was really excited to just do more and give more. So I took that opportunity, and from there, decided I wanted to apply for the Godar program and was accepted, and was mentored here by the Alshira Godi and ended up getting ordained. Not long after that, I went to Elsie Fest, and Matt gave me a big hug and said, "Here's your shirt." And I was thinking it was my folk builder shirt or my Githia shirt. And it didn't say Githia, it said Witan. And I was just blown away. And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. Thank you for the opportunity. So that's kind of how that went. I went from a folk builder and a very, very motivated volunteer and giving it my all to being handed a Witan shirt at Elsie. Very, very big surprise on that.
Yeah, at first you were wondering if it was a misprint or a typo.
I did. I had to look at it a couple times.
No, it was overwhelmingly self-evident that that's where you needed to be. And volunteering and leading and helping in the AFA is certainly, when done right, is such a labor of love and of passion and of zeal for the gods and for what you're doing, that we see that a lot. People that finally find this and everything clicks and they're just excited and motivated for what we're doing. They can, they can rise through stuff pretty fast if they throw themselves at things and give it 100%. It's very much just internally, when we look at our people, we want everyone to succeed. And so when we have people that, have an ambition to one day be a Gothi or a Githia, our answer is always yes, but yes with conditions. Sometimes those conditions are, seemingly insurmountable, but we want people to win and we want people to make it there. So we have no desire to hold anybody back. We want to lift everybody up. And like I said, sometimes that road and that path is much harder for some people that aren't naturally cut out for, naturally gifted for a certain project. And others times it's an easier fit. But if people are committed and want to get somewhere, we want everybody to have those opportunities and to be able to succeed. And not just at AFA stuff, but anything they're trying to set out to do. So Daniel asks, "How's Harrier Gothi? how would you respond to our critics saying we make stuff up when it comes to our spiritual practices? Of course we make stuff up, and we admit it every time that we do. Making stuff up is how any progress or anything has ever happened in our faith. If the current leadership aren't making stuff up, then they're stagnant and they're not building. They're just, I don't know, giving lip service to what people did in a bygone time, as opposed to moving things forward. And it depends on what making stuff up is. The AFA is always very honest on where we have what ideas. Some ideas that we have are new and are developments. Some of them are evolutions of older ideas. And some of them are our best interpretation of very ancient ideas. But we're always honest about those things. And it's one of those things, last week, I think I talked a lot about the significance of our ordination and the responsibilities that brings. And one of the things that is a responsibility is to cultivate and grow the faith of Asatru. And that means to innovate at times. It means to start new traditions. It means sometimes to alter how we celebrate old traditions. And it means we have a responsibility to the gods and to our folk to make Asatru living and vibrant in the times that we occupy. And I certainly hope that whoever comes after me and whoever comes after them and whoever comes after them continues to develop things and have new ideas. I talk with Svan when we do our talks on here about our gods. Whenever there's a question we don't know from ancient lore, we rely on the interactions that we have with our gods in the present. And it's always my hope that the better relationship that we build with our gods, the better we'll grow to understand them, the more we'll come to know them, the more we'll learn about, the things that they like and the things that they don't. And in, even better ways to practice Asatru. And, that should be all of our hope. When we look at stuff, one thing that I think is really important about Asatru is we don't have a lot of, Muhammad in the cave getting the divine writings things. We don't have Moses going up the mountain and getting, Jehovah writing on rocks for him to go take down. We don't have those moments in our faith where, the gods sat down and said, hey guys, quick, write this down, because this is exactly how you practice Asatru. That's just not the nature of our faith. Our faith is built on relationships that our ancestors had with our gods. And our faith is currently built on relationships that we have with our gods. And that shows up a real different way when you look at any of the things that we take as our holy lore that we hold sacred. At one point in time, if you traveled back in time 1,000 years, the same critics could say, hey, Gothi, you're making stuff up. And he'd probably say, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm taking what I learned and practicing it. Innovations are how we got any of the things that we had. There had to have, for any of our lore, at one point, there was, a Gothi or multiple Gothis that sat down and say, hey, I think this is a thing. This has proven itself through the relationship we have with the gods. I've been shown a sign or a vision, and we're going to call this good, and we're going to call it a thing. And I think that's how any of the innovations in our faith have happened and how they'll continue to happen. And I think that's one of the big difference between doing something and studying something. You can be a tremendous fan of something and be very studied on it, but not be a practitioner of that thing. I mean, there's, it's football season. There's a lot of fat dudes sitting around on their couch that know an awful lot about football, but that have never thrown a football or never played football, never been on a team, never done those things. There's a difference between a football player and a fan. And I think that the same is true of a lot of people who are in the general orbit of our faith. There's people that are actively engaged in worshiping the gods with regularity and building that gift cycle. And then there's people that instead spend a lot of time studying about those things and are scholars on the way that ancient people practiced our religion. But the difference is huge. I've often said this, who's the better warrior, who's the better general, the guy that studied Napoleon's maxims on war, or Napoleon conquering Europe himself on horseback with his armies? Because, I guarantee you that scholar, if he devotes his whole life to it, may know more about it, but there's something really different between knowing how someone else did something and getting out there in the arena and actually doing things and actually shaping things, with the practice. And so the AFA is engaged in shaping Asatru through practice, certainly every week, arguably every day. And, hopefully that shows, hopefully that pays off. And I really hope that we do that in a way that our gods are proud of and approve of. And I think that they do, by and large, but we're always very hopeful that that's the case. What are your thoughts, Brandi, about us making stuff up?
I think that people who say we make things up need to understand that we are a people who evolve continually. We are always trying for the next advancement, reaching for the next star, going for the next goal. We're never going to be still. We need to remember that we need to apply Asatru as it is today, not how it was in the 1200s. If you do nothing but analyze what was, you'll never see what can be. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between us and them, is we're looking towards the future. We aren't just analyzing what our ancestors did in the 1200s or before. We're trying to take what they learned and what they passed to us and apply it in a modern world, which is much different than the Reconstructionist standpoint. We're also building our own culture and our own traditions. And that's part of the legacy of people and of folk and of churches, is building that legacy. You can't build a legacy if you don't move forward. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah, I think that, and I've said this a lot of times, but it's a good enough time as any to reiterate it. So much of our lore focuses on that theme of staying one step ahead of the forces of chaos, one step ahead of the devouring wolf. Our holy symbols are symbols that imply spinning and imply movement. The sun and the moon, they're chased by wolves, and they've always got to try to stay one step ahead of those wolves, because if they're slipping, then they get devoured. Our biggest foe in so much of our lore is entropy, and that force that drags you down into chaos if you don't constantly apply pressure to move forward and to push ahead and to do. That concept is why the program's named Victory Never Sleeps. You can't stop and rest on what we've accomplished. We've got to keep fueling that fire with accomplishments. I certainly hope that 1,000 years from now, people aren't sitting around trying to see the best way that they can emulate what Brandi and I are doing. I hope that they're honoring and celebrating Brandi and I, and that we're worthy of that. But I hope they're building on the things that we've, been a part of, and moving the ball forward. It'd be very disappointing if they didn't, and it was just, holding stuff that we did in some kind of a museum piece that was dusty and behind glass that nobody ever touched. That's not why we're putting in all the work that we're putting in. And I don't think that's why the ancient Gothar worked as hard as they did for our gods. I really hope that they're proud of us and the things that we are doing and the stuff we are making up.
I hope the next generation makes stuff up too.
they will if we're doing something right. So Matt, Brandi, what are we drinking tonight? All I've got right now is water. I've got a Sam Adams Alpine Lager that claims to be brisk and smooth. It's mildly brisk and mildly smooth.
I am drinking hot chocolate because it's cold outside and I love chocolate.
See, I've got an odd relationship with the cold. So growing up in Alaska, and Brandi grew up in North Dakota where it's very bitter cold, so she may feel this. Winter, when I think of winter, the feeling that I get in my bones is warmth, not cold. Because I didn't grow up in a cave. I grew up in a house that was heated. And when it was cold outside, it meant the heat was on inside. And we're wearing jackets and you're wearing stuff. So I'm always over warm. Like my house is not cranked up. I think it's at 65 right now, but I'm uncomfortably warm. That's why I'm drinking cold beer. Witan Callahan, what's your hobby and how do you relax? Any favorite food? Please don't say wrap snacks.
Wrap snacks are awesome.
I'll have you know wrap snacks are delicious. I don't want that to be the truth, but it is.
They're delicious. And Heather Young sent me some not that long ago, and they were still delicious the second time. So, yes. My hobbies. I like to do things that I can multitask with. So I'm always doing more than one thing. So I like to do thread work. I like to do crocheting, knitting, even though I'm absolutely terrible at knitting for some reason. And I like crocheting because I can listen to something else or read while I'm crocheting because you just get into a rhythm and you can just go. So I like to do that. That helps me relax. I like to do things like that. Favorite foods other than wrap snacks. I'm going to have to go with like lobster and crab, a good lobster and crab boil. So I grew up with my grandmother. She was from the West Coast. She was from the Seattle area. Originally is where she grew up. And we did not have turkey at Thanksgiving. We did not have turkey at Christmas time or anything like that. We had lobster. And it was once a year and it was delicious. And the older I get, the better it is.
Growing up, we had something similar. I was born and raised in Anchorage, and crab is expensive everywhere. And I suppose it always was, but it was much less expensive in Alaska. And like anytime around the holidays, you go up there, if they've got a really good, deal going on, a really good buffet, they'll have, king crab legs. And we would go over to my grandparents' house, and my grandfather would always, get a bunch of king crab, and we'd have a, big king crab feed, probably once or twice a year. And God, I'm going to take out a loan to try to do that now and do that where I'm at now. But man, that's good. I miss that. I remember once when I was working security up there, I got to one of the cool things in the security industry up there around the holidays is if you're bouncing for different holiday parties places, because there's alcohol and people get stupid, so they have you on hand. But usually they'll let you, after everybody else is eating, they'll let you go in and raid the buffet. Or if you're working a concert, the good ones. I'll say this: Celtic Woman. I know they like cycle through their people or whatever, but I worked one of their concerts. They were all like gluten intolerant and vegan and all kind of strange stuff, but they were very sweet. They let security go and eat all their green room food, which was awesome. And Huey Lewis and the News. Huey Lewis was not a very pleasant gentleman, but the News were awesome, and they let us in there to eat their green room snacks too. So I appreciate that. I have no idea why I got on that, but it do. Next question is also from the King of Cheese, Brandi, how do you balance the instinct to go all in, even at detriment to one's own health when it comes to work and keeping a good work ethic without being lazy?
I'll be honest, I don't. I have to be told. But I've got a group of leadership and a group of friends that will tell me when I'm burning the candle at both ends and I'm at risk of losing the candle. Um, I've got a lot of people that look out for me that way. So if I'm working myself too hard, if I'm trying too hard, if I'm burning out, they tell me. My husband will tell me, my kids will tell me. Nathan Erlinson, Ashley McStalker, Jason Gallagher, me and Jason Gallagher yell at each other quite a bit. So not literally, but stop carrying that and sit down. But no, people look out for me, to be honest, Tony.
It's a strange thing because I don't know, there's a lot that goes into it. There's something just primally beautiful and inspirational about people that literally put it all on the line for something they believe in. And that is the essence of heroism. And there's more to being a hero than that, but the idea of literally putting yourself at risk for something that is truly important to you is such a special thing. And she mentioned Jason. We have some of our people that really, they offer their bodies up on the altars of our gods to make this happen. And we are so very blessed to have those kind of people with us. And yeah, it's our job to get a hold of them when they're going a little bit too far and calm them down and, sit them down, find something else to do. But the thing is, those folks are so inspirational by doing that and being willing to put that much out for this, that it inspires the people that tell them to sit down to then go pick up where they left off and try to keep carrying that until they get back up. And it's really a really special dynamic, and it's something really cool to see. And one of the special things in my position is I get such a broad view of the AFA and of our members and leaders over time. And I get to watch people develop and watch things happen. Watching people develop that and express that over time of really putting themselves out there to make stuff happen. It's an amazing thing. It helps me as a leader so much that I've got these great people working with me. But just as a fan, just as a kid that found Asatru and thought it was the greatest thing in the world, sitting back and being able to see all the work that these people do, it's just so special and it's so inspirational to me every single day. Nick asks, what are some of the fun projects we got on the horizons coming up out of our Baldurs House team?
I see that fun in quotation marks, Nick. We've actually got a lot going on with the Baldurs House team. So as far as the Hoff goes, Nathan Erlinson and Josh in Wisconsin, they're working on the floors in the basement. And James Alt is going to be working on the floors upstairs. And those groups of folks got some beautiful plans coming up for these floors. I am so excited about what they're going to be doing with these floors. This is our next big thing. I don't know how fun it's going to be, but I know it's going to be beautiful. There's a lot of imagery that they've talked about with me and that they have talked about with the Ashira Godi, and I'm really, really excited to see what these men can get accomplished, and that is going to be amazing. I'm super excited about it. projects that we've got going on, we've always got something going on. We have got men's book studies and women's book studies. We've got our monthly district membership call that we do. We've got outreach to our folk. We've got all kinds of things going on. So if you're in Baldurs House District, and even if you're not in Baldurs House District, get a hold of the folk builders in our district here, because we've got all kinds of interesting things going on, whether it be classes or book studies or calls. There's just so much going on. There's something almost every single day. So definitely take a look at that. Yes, baldurshouse.org/contact us. Get a hold of the folk builders there. I think every folk builder and every apprentice folk builder in Baldurs House District has got at least one project that they're working on. So they're a very industrious and productive group of men and women. So get a hold of them, because there's a lot.
Yeah, kind of shout out to my Baldurs House leaders. Baldurs House leadership team is really leading the pack right now. They are shining at all levels. They are functioning as a cohesive team. It's hard because we've got these Hoff districts, and I don't know if everybody who's watching this or listening to this is familiar with them, but right now it's amazing. We have 4 Hoffs and 4 Hoff districts, and it's the most amazing thing in the entire universe up to this point. But that said, we have 4 Hoffs over the surface of the globe. So that being said, the Hoff districts are pretty big chunks of real estate for everybody to be able to work together on. And the Baldurs House team is really doing an amazing, amazing job at that lately. So I noticed on the side, and I really hope that that people are not playing with me, there was mention of a Cardi B barbecue chicken wing flavor of Wrap Snacks. It sounds like something that Nathan Cross could have been making up, but that's cruel if you are, because it sounds amazing. And I hope that you're not teasing me like that. I don't want those snacks to be good. I really don't. I got them because I was going to talk about how terrible they were and laugh at them. But I was defeated. They are amazing. I wish they weren't. Do you have a recommendation for what to read and in what order to learn about practicing Asatru? So I want to say this up front, and this is just an admission that's unfortunate, but it is. We have wanted to produce materials to help with that for a long time. And it's one of the things that so far having the right people in the right spots and finding the time to do has been a very difficult task. And I can honestly say it's because we're so busy, practicing Asatru that it just doesn't come out that way. We would like to. We've got some projects in the works, and I don't want to hype them too much because I don't have an idea when they'll come to fruition, and I don't want to be that guy that promises and then doesn't deliver. I will give you, and I promise I will actually answer your question and give you some reading recommendations here in a second. But what I would say, absolutely, if you want to know about practicing Asatru, it is a lot of listening to me talk about stupid things like Wrap Snacks, but listening to this program, we get into that a lot. And it's expressed so much better, at least by me, in the spoken word and in answering questions or giving explanations than it is being written down. The other thing that I would say is get with AFA members in your area and start actually practicing Asatru. You're going to run into people that have been doing this for a long time, that are coming from very different places, that all have really valuable insight into how they practice Asatru and how it's done. But as far as questions, get a hold of our Gothar. These people, that's what they do. That's who they are. They are priests and priestesses of our gods. And they are quite literally experts on practicing Asatru. And if you have any questions, or there's anything you want to know specific, please always feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to as well. I'd be happy to help you any way I could on that. As far as stuff to read, I think reading our founder, Steve McNallen's book, Asatru, A Native European Spirituality, is always a really good choice. He's got another book that we sell on the website, Living Asatru. It's a little bit dated. It's a little bit of a kind of a snapshot of what they were doing back in the Asatru Free Assembly days in the late 80s. And it's a really nice perspective too. It's modern people in a time that, many of us can remember, and how they actually practiced Asatru. So I think that's a really valuable one. I think one that takes a little bit more work to figure out how to apply it in your daily life. Culture of the Teutons is awesome, and I recommend it to everybody, but it comes with this caveat, especially when you talk about practice. The author, Wilhelm Groenbeck, he takes every principle or every point to an extreme that I don't feel you need to take it to. There's a whole lot of very stark absolutism in it that I think a person with discernment can dial back to something appropriate and something feasible. And you've also got to remember that that is very much Mr. Groenbeck describing an ancient people and how they did things. So when you're going to apply that to a modern circumstance, and again, this is common sense, and I'm sure you know this, but when you read it with that in mind, with the challenge of, this being a principle that's sacred. How do we apply that principle in a modern context? Those are the three that I would recommend off the top of my head for practice. Brandi, what are your thoughts?
As far as practice, I'm going to have to probably go with Steve's book, because that's going to be the best example of what the practice of it would be. As far as learning what the practice of Asatru would be, I highly recommend going to the Hofs. The Alshir, they said, go ahead and contact your Godar, but also get to the Hofs, because you're going to see the actual bloat happen. You're going to be part of Sumbul. You're going to be sharing the frith. Practicing Asatru is also not it. The studying is important so you understand, but that's not the sole purpose. The sole purpose of Asatru is worshiping the gods. So practice makes perfect. And a lot of this is going to be based on your personal relationship with those gods. You need to build that gift cycle with them. So before worrying about getting it perfect, I would definitely start with just starting that gift cycle and start building that relationship.
See, this isn't the answer that everybody wants to hear, because it's a little bit more nuanced and more difficult, but it's the truth. Asatru is not it's not a math equation. It's not like there's these certain steps in the right order you need to do to unlock communication with our gods. It's not like that. It doesn't work with that level of, it's not a science, it's an art. And it's very much about relationships and interactions between, living and willful beings. So you've got to approach it that way. When talking about the perfect way to do it, I don't even know if such a thing exists, because I think that, if Brandi was at her ultimate height of perfection and I was at the ultimate height of mat perfection, I think that our bloats would be very different. I think a lot of things that we would do in our practice would be different, and maybe in subtle ways, but they would certainly be different. And I think that's as it should be. There's certain key things that you have to do to get it right, but there's and this is another thing that people aren't comfortable with. There's no one right way, but there's certainly wrong ways, and there's certainly generally right ways. And then there's this whole area in between that there's an art to. Like I was saying, when Brandi gives a bloat, her bloat's different than mine. Swan's bloats are very different than mine. You may have heard me talk about on the show before, Githia Patricia Hall, who was a woman that was very influential on me in Asatru. Her bloats are extremely different than mine. And all of those people, I think, give very powerful bloats. I think all of those people are practicing Asatru correctly, but each of our best self, presenting our best self to the gods, each of our best selves is going to look different. And that's part of the beauty of our faith. It does make it more complicating, and it makes the easy answers more frustrating to get. But I think it's certainly a truth that we recognize. So we got a super chat donation over here from our good friend in Canada, Lawrence Forbes. Thank you very much for your 10 Canadian dollars. We appreciate that very much. And this is an interesting question. It's kind of a cool question because I really like to dream on things. Matt, when the AFA has 3 or 4 times the number of members it does now, do you foresee any changes in leadership structure or administration? Also, are there things that might generally concern you when that day comes? Feel free to give your thoughts. Or feel free to give your thoughts too, Brandi. Great stream this evening. Thanks. Well, I'm glad that you're enjoying the stream. So, at the numbers that you are talking about, at 3 times or 4 times our current membership, no, I don't think that we would change our leadership structure. What I think it would look like at 3 or 4 times the membership, though, we were trying to run the numbers on this the other day on, assuming that we had all the money in the world, at what point is it, what level of member number do we need to justify, another HOF or to make an additional HOF a reasonable thing to do? And I think that we are still technically below the number of HOFs that we would like to have for our current member number. So I think if we had 3 or 4 times the members, we'd certainly have 3 or 4 times the HOFs. Now, I think that just knowing how that works, the rate of HOFs to members, we probably have a while to fill that up. I think that if magically tomorrow our membership number quadrupled, it'd be a while before we filled up all those HOF spots, but it would be increasingly fast. So that's to say, administratively, we'd be broken up into much smaller HOF districts. And what I do foresee with that, eventually we're going to have so many HOFs and so many HOF districts, we may have like a super duper HOF that defines a district of several smaller HOFs maybe, or several local HOFs. And there's one that, is like the district seat, as it were, of the administration of that district. I don't think that we would change any of the functions of how we work, being it all culminating in one person of the Alsherier Gothi, and then a strata of ordained people. Now at 4 or 5, or at 3 or 4 times the number we have now, we might have a further breakdown of like different levels of Gothar that may have different levels of responsibility with that. Other than that, I don't think the administrative structure would change very much, because even when we get HOFs internationally, I know that comes with different things, but because we're united by our faith and by our church, the Asatru Folk Assembly, I wouldn't want to restrict those things internationally. I would want it to span different nations, at least while that makes sense initially, because I'd want the administration of that to be about the people and about the space, and to kind of transcend regional or national borders in that sense. So I think that even in that case, it would still function very similar to what it would be now. Now, 4 times the membership, I think that really does open up the opportunity of a HOF outside of the United States. And so I see that. As far as potential concerns, it's an interesting question because I think for people like us, I think for traditionally minded white people in the world today, we've developed a mindset to where it is much easier for us to think about concerns at that number than about just how amazing it would be to have 4 times the members, or about all of the fantastic things that would come with that. You know, my wife will do that sometimes when we have people coming over. There'll be a comment about, oh, we don't have enough chairs, or, oh, you know, some logistical thing. And I'm like, man, what an amazing problem to have. You know, so the problems are going to be, we have too many people that we care about coming over to our house to share a meal and participate in an AFA event. That's awesome. You know, one of the realities is the bigger that we get, the more attention that we'll draw. The media likes to create and sensationalize stories that they can shoehorn into a racially divisive narrative. That's something they're really excited about for a while now, but certainly for the past 6-7 years. So we'll probably get more attention. We'll get more attention, but one of the things is the more attention that we'll get, there'll be a lot more of our people that'll be aware of us and that'll come home and that'll join what we're doing, and that can help us in what we're doing. So yeah, I could see that being, problematic. As far as other concerns that way, really, I don't. I mean, getting more uncomfortable attention from the press, certainly. But other than that, I don't foresee problems at that level. I think that'd be fantastic. I think that a truth for good or for ill, if we had 4 times the number of people we had now, that number still be relatively small in the scheme of, the billions of people in the world, or certainly the 300 million people in the United States. I think we could get, exponentially bigger than 4 times, many times over, before that number would become cumbersome in any kind of other context. But again, every new amount of growth that we have, sure, it brings a little bit of struggle figuring it out, but what an amazing, it's well worth, I will take that struggle any day. That's an amazing thing to have struggle about. So I love thinking about that. Do you have any thoughts on what things would look like if we're 3 or 4 times as big, Brandi?
Yeah, I don't have any concerns. The future's so bright I gotta wear shades. I ain't worried.
Kids out there are going to think you just made that up.
I know, right? That's why I'm going to be a legend.
There you go. Which of the ICER most embodies the virtue of industriousness? Because you are the member of AFA leadership that most embodies industriousness, who do you think amongst the ICER would most embody the virtue of industriousness, Brandi?
Geffian. I like Geffian. I actually do my charming of the plow bloats to Geffian. And part of my bloat for charming of the plow is I ask people to bring their tools that they use for their jobs or their hobbies or their crafting. Bring tools that help you be industrious. Bring your pens if you're a writer. Bring your hammer if you're a carpenter. If you work with your hands, I'll bless your hands to help you be industrious and strong, and to help pull a piece of land of your own, to help create your own island of excellence and victory. So that's definitely Geffian to me.
I think that's a good question because it, gets the juices flowing and makes you really think about some stuff. I think there's a good case to be made for several of them. I think that I overthink stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and pick Asatru, because he's so often mentioned as being out in the East fighting giants. He's out doing his job of protecting mankind and the gods from the forces of chaos steadily. And it's a difficult thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. He has to apply himself to battling giants and Jormungandr and, really putting in that effort, and he's on quests to do that often in enemy territory. And I think that idea of him having to travel out to fight the foes of the gods so frequently is a good example of industry amongst the Aesir. Cody asks, Baldurs House was a pretty big news story. How did you stay the course? Were there any challenges that you had to overcome? That one's for you, Brandi.
Yeah. I remember getting emails from someone that I worked with that sent me a link that said, hey, you made Yahoo News. Did you see it? My mom emailed out links to all of our family going, hey, check it out. Look at this. Look at this. Not in a bad way. It was just, I can't believe they're making such a big deal out of Brandi's church. I mean, if you knew Brandi and the people she goes to church with, you wouldn't understand why they're such big news. We're awesome, but they made this out to be such a huge thing. And it wasn't. It wasn't. I guess the biggest thing that we had to overcome, the biggest challenge that we had to face wasn't the outside, it was inside. And when I say that, it was not letting the outside forces that were trying to scare us. I could sit here all day long and say, no, it's not that big of a deal. I can say that now. When it first happened, it was a big deal because we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how big this was going to get. So the biggest challenge was holding the line. And I tell everybody that, and all the, when we got in Yortov, I just, I reminded them, hold the line. Hold the line. Keep your chin up and hold the line. It's normal to be nervous. It's normal to be a little bit afraid. It is how you act in those moments, whether you're going to tuck tail and run, or if you're just going to freeze, or if you're just going to smile and say, I got it, it's fine. That is what makes the difference. You can be scared all day long. It's what you do with that makes the difference. And remember earlier in the podcast, I said when I'm stressed out about something, I work. So they don't realize the big favor they did by initially stressing me out, because I was there every weekend working. So it's my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you were right there in the midst of it. From a distance, one of the things there's a couple of things. It was really cool. There's a couple kind of, I don't know, neat moments from all of it. You're absolutely right that the biggest problems were internal, people having to confront their fears. And it's uncomfortable when reporters are hounding you or are potentially hounding you. It's very uncomfortable, and especially in this day and age with the world like it is uncomfortable. I get that. But it's interesting. We had some people that, thought they were real tough guys. And as soon as there was the whiff of, put up or shut up, they ran for the hills. We had some other people that, don't seem like they're particularly tough guys that stood up, stood up against, all comers and had no fear about it. and stepped right up there and were examples of courage. So it was interesting. It put some folks to the test on, who they really were and who they just talked about being. And that was nice to see. It was disappointing in some cases. It was also, made me very, very proud of certain people. So that's really cool. One of the other things that was neat, we are so blessed to have Law Speaker Turnage with us. It was really cool to, when dealing with a city government on a zoning issue, to be able to fly in our AFA attorney to, go in there and look like $1 million and represent us well. That's awesome. And I was so proud of that. And the other thing is, I think it's very easy to think, and I know it was for me. So I'm not projecting this on anybody. This is me. It was scary dealing with a city government because you're like, wow, they're the big fish and you're the small fish in the pond. But then I started running the numbers. You were talking about what Asatru would look like when or I say this like you're all Lawrence. Lawrence was talking a little bit ago about the house, how it would look if the AFA were 3 or 4 times bigger. Well, looking at proportions, we are 3 times bigger than the population of Murdoch. So, we were dealing with a city council of people that, have very few constituents in a very small town, and we've got a lot of stuff going on. We were absolutely the big fish in that pond when we were having that conversation. It was kind of a cool thing to realize that no, we've got legit numbers on stuff. We are numerically significant in we're starting to grow. We're getting to where we have a footprint in the world. When you look at Murdoch, one of the other cool things is I pulled up an aerial map of the town of Murdoch. And you can see where the Hoff property is. And to just know, like we physically own, a visible, like 2 or 3% of that town's footprint is us. And that's kind of a cool thing. So we got another question, and I'm going to let you take a swing at this first, Brandi. What does uninvoked astral projection mean? I know before I came home to the AFA, I was criticized in Christianity when I spoke of it. Is this something I should pursue?
So if you're talking about uninvoked astral projection as unintentional or spontaneous, and should it's something that you should pursue, that's entirely up to you, but it's not something I would personally do myself. I would prefer a form of Utsara or something like that. But as far as uninvoked astral projection, no, that is not something I would personally do, but you do you. But I think if what you're talking about is the unintentional or spontaneous, I'm one of those people that likes to be in control of my thoughts myself, what I'm doing, when I'm doing it. So that's not something I would personally pursue. Christianity in general does not like the thought of astral projection for various reasons. But no, the way you're describing it, no, that's not something I would pursue personally. Like I said, if that works for you, cool. It's just not something I would be into.
So, Callum, I did get your question on the super chat, and I will get to it right after this. I should have got you first, but I didn't see it in time. But I did see that come through, and I will get to you. As far as the question, and I should add this is from someone, Monica is their screen name on here. So, yeah, there we go. Because I think that the nuance, as far as this goes, does have a male and female component to it. I've never heard the term uninvoked astral projection, so I have to make some assumptions about what it means. If it is you unintentionally astral projecting, as if perhaps when you're, asleep or something else, I wouldn't block it out. As far as pursuing it, I would seek to gain control of it. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do, no matter who asks, is if this is something that you are doing unintentionally in a meditative or in a dream state or whatever, then I think you should absolutely pursue how to rein that in. And once you know how to rein that in, how to use that in a beneficial way. If it is you receiving some kind of projection, or you, if it is you receiving messages or something working through you in a way that was unintentional, if you were a guy, I would suggest that you handle that different than if you're a woman. Being a woman, I think that that's something that you could, if you wanted to, be more open to exploring and letting that happen. But again, it's so much of it is on a case-by-case basis. So I don't want to just say, yeah, go, swing for the fences on it and I wish you the best. I think you should be cautious with what you do. And I think that if it's something because you mentioned uninvoked. So I'm assuming that this is something that you find yourself, that this happens to you from time to time. If it does, I think you should reach out to your local Gothi or Githya. And I say local, it doesn't have to be. I think you should reach out to any of our Gothar and, for somebody to kind of help you through it or help you process with it or work with it in that way. But yeah, I wouldn't say just shut it down. If there's something that's going on, I'd want to figure it out, put a context to it. And then, you being a woman, I don't think there's anything wrong with you wanting to pursue it as long as as long as you're able to find that it's beneficial in some way and put it in a context to where it's helpful to you and not damaging to you. So, Column, to your question, and with a donation of 20, I believe I'm reading the abbreviation correct, Australian dollars. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Can someone in the AFA be publicly outspoken against the Abrahamic religions, either in a respectful or in a vulgar and crude manner? Also, do you think it's fair to cancel someone's membership if they happen to be imprisoned? They may have been imprisoned wrongfully or defended the folk and found themselves in prison. Thanks. So there's a number of things to unpack in that. And we're going cross borders here too. So please recognize that. I was going to say I don't even know if the right term is an Australian citizen, but as an Australian citizen, you are asking an American citizen a question about can and can't you. I don't know legally what the standard is there on your ability to have freedom of speech, unfortunately. One would like to think that in the Western world, you could speak freely on those subjects, either politely or rudely, if you so choose, and that would not land you in legal trouble. I put the caveat out there. The AFA does not want to tell you it's okay to do anything that is illegal. But on principle, as far as the AFA is concerned, we would prefer that you addressed your grievances with other faith groups in respectful ways. But you are you are certainly a free individual and you don't represent the AFA in an official capacity. Speak your mind about the Abrahamic faiths if you so choose. That's entirely up to you. Again, as long as that's legal in the country where you're at, no, I don't think that the AFA would have consequences or repercussions with that. Like anything, context is everything. If you carry on the rude discussion of that in a way that causes friction amongst our people internally, then that might be something. But no, you've got the freedom to speak your mind and say the things that you feel. As far as, do I think it's fair to cancel somebody's membership if they happen to be imprisoned? So this is something that folks may not realize. And I want people to understand, because I've thought about this too. The AFA does not accept membership from people who find us when they are incarcerated, if they are still incarcerated. We wait until someone is out and in the free world before they can join us. That's not the same as us cutting ties with somebody if we have a member that is convicted of a crime. That's not an automatic thing, and it's something that we have had happen before, and there's nuance to that. That depends a lot on the circumstance. You mentioned that they could have been wrongfully imprisoned or that they could be, a political prisoner. We are very aware that that is a possibility. And so I think it comes down a lot to nuance. And sometimes it comes down to the nature of the crime involved. If they are convicted and we have reason to believe that that's a legitimate conviction for something we find heinous and unacceptable, then absolutely we'll dump their membership. But if they're convicted of something different, just because they get convicted does not mean that we throw them out. And I noticed there's kind of nuance in your question. It's not like you asked of the AFA, but I'm assuming with the membership, you're applying AFA membership. So folks know we don't just kick somebody out if they get in trouble with the law. It is a discussion that we have, certainly, but that's not an automatic throw somebody out for thing. Yeah, I think that's the entirety of the question there. Brandi, do you have anything to add on that?
I do a little bit. I'm going to give you the same advice that I gave to my children, and I don't mean that as, motherly advice or that I'm trying to talk to you as if you're younger. It's just advice in general. You can say what you want, how you want, when you want. Don't always assume that people are going to agree with you, and don't always assume that people are going to support what you say. Just because you believe it as passionately as you do doesn't mean that somebody else will share your passion in that. So while you may take a different tone in your grievances with the Abrahamic faiths, not everybody will share that tone. Some of us will have a very respectful disagreement or debate, but there are a lot of people who still will show respect as their parents or grandparents may still be part of that faith. Respectful disagreement with something can sometimes be better than loud shouting of grievance. So I will put that out there.
I think that's solid advice. And Colin, this isn't directed at you. This is to everybody out there, just so they know. There is a different level of what it takes for us to kick you out of the AFA versus what it takes for lots of AFA members to not really want to have things to do with you. You can be a jerk and have nobody like you and still be in the AFA. So when I say the AFA, is okay with something or not, it's not, I'm not going to kick you out for saying mean things about Christianity, but Brandi's point is very, very important is, a lot of us still have people we're very close to that may be very involved in their Christian faith. And if you're not careful with the words you say, you can very easily offend some people that you may not mean to offend. So be intentional. That's kind of something that I apologize. There's been a couple of dumb bouncer analogies tonight, but that's something that, when I ran some guys with security, I would always tell them, like, if you want us to get in a fight with somebody, if that's what happens, then okay, cool, I got you. But what I don't want is you to stumble into a fight that you didn't see coming. That's what's going to make me upset. If you see it coming and we need to go there, okay. So, you can be offensive or not, but don't accidentally offend people you don't mean to offend. And that's a really important thing. If your intent is to offend, then, that's a choice for you to make. But be fully aware of your audience. And I think that's sound advice for anybody. And again, that's not aimed at you, Colin. Your question was great, and I think it's well taken. That's just to folks listening. You have a lot of freedoms, but your freedoms come with an understanding that there's consequences, and everybody has the freedom to disagree with you and not want to be your buddy, depending upon how you exercise your freedoms. Nathan asks, I'll hear you, Gothi. When did you know you wanted Witan Callahan on the Witan? Before you and I had that conversation. So one of the cool things that used to happen often, see what happens this year again or not, depending on where we stay, is the hot tub stumble and hot tub kind of Baldurs House after parties. So the hotel that folks were staying at that was close by had a cool hot tub, and people, after they'd been working or whatever else, would go out there and relax and pass around some schnapps and enjoy the time in the hot tub. One time, a couple of times, Nathan and I were out there. One time it was he and I, and he asked me that, and he was a strong advocate that, like, no, you need to put Brandi on the Witan. Why is she not on the Witan? What's your problem? I wanted to put her on the Witan well before that conversation. And so I was trying to be kind of coy with the conversation. I think that I knew that I wanted her to get there. It's hard because it's not like there was some lightning strike moment. Certainly before the time she was ordained as a Githya, I didn't know how fast that would happen, but getting her there was something that I wanted to see then. I think the moment that most solidified it, but again, Brandi just oozes with competence, and it is a no-brainer. It would be ridiculous not to have her on the Witan. Brandi is top 3 hardest workers in the AFA. If you go by percentage of people's capability, I think Brandi is solidly top 3. If you go by overall getting stuff done and execution, I want to say she's top 2 and say I compete with her, but that's not really true because half of the stuff I take credit for is stuff that she's done 50% or more of the work for. So I got to say Brandi accomplishes more than I do. But yeah, there's no scenario she's not top 3 of our getting stuff done people, and the hardest workers in the AFA. And I think, I am obliged to put my hat in the ring, but truth be told, I think Brandi beats me on it. That said, the really solidifying moment, one thing with being the All-Harrier Gothi, and again, I wouldn't change this for anything in the world, but it's part of when I talked about the responsibilities of ordination and the further responsibilities then of being the All-Harrier Gothi. Part of us being a theocratic autocracy, it's really cool because Matt gets to be the king of stuff, and that's awesome. I promise you, it's the coolest thing in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But it also means that you can feel really alone, and you can feel all the weight of the world on your shoulders all the time. There's never a time that I don't feel that weight. There's never a time I wouldn't want to feel that weight. But there are times it's heavier than others. One time, and we mentioned that it's funny how it's weird, Law Speaker, literally, how these conversations on here kind of get a theme or questions harken back to other previous questions in the course of the show. It's kind of neat how that happens. So we talked about Baldurs House a little bit and how the big challenge wasn't an external challenge, it was an internal challenge. Well, we built Baldurs House based on the expectation that a certain kindred and a certain leader in the AFA at the time was going to help us to make this project work, because it was a lot of work. We talked about, the state it was in, and we had somebody up there, and he was a friend of mine. I felt like he was a friend of mine for a number of years, and somebody put a lot of trust in. And we were really banking on those folks to come through for us. And they were, influential regionally. And literally up until the day before, they were all in. They would help any way possible. They were 100% ride or die. They were on it. Until all of a sudden they weren't. And I got the news that this person who was on the Witan at the time, and again, somebody that had been very, very helpful in building things under my administration, and this person completely turned their back on us and then began attacking us, and took their kindred with them. And a number of people who knew them kind of went with them. And all of a sudden, so much of this new Hoff that we invested in, there was, this moment of kind of free fall and figuring out what the next step is. And it hit me really hard. And I kind of went out, and I went out to, there's a cool cigar bar down in Carson City that I went, and I, had a cigar, and had a couple of beers, and I'm so used to, at that point, we're in a really awesome time. There's not a whole lot of drama for us right now. We've got great people. We've got people focused on doing awesome stuff. That took a while to get that way. At that point in AFA history, there was, you'd have these kindreds that would defect and take people with them. And there was a lot of, a few eggs needed to get broken to make an omelet at that point. And that being said, we're at this point where a good friend of mine had just kind of turned on me, and in a business way, all of a sudden we lost these people that were going to help us remodel this building that, now we don't know what to do with, and we just invested in. And we made a promise. That's the thing. When we invest in one of these Hoffs, it's a promise to our membership there, but it's also literally a promise to the gods. And I'd said this once more when that person was kind of on the fence, is like, no, we owe it to Baldur to make this place amazing. And now all of a sudden we're left hanging. Well, I'm so used to having to jump in and put out fires and plug holes and make stuff work. Brandy called me, and it wasn't, an, oh crap, what do I do? It was, hey, Matt, are you okay? How are you doing? We've got this. Let me tell you the steps that I've already taken to shore everything up and make sure that we are perfectly fine. And she had about 4 things she had already taken care of, calls she'd already made. And she was genuinely checking on me to make sure I was all right. And that means the world to me. It means the world to me sitting here right now. That doesn't happen all the time. So that told me volumes about her worth, her character, and the fact that she needs to be on my Witan. And she only proves that more each and every day. That's one of the things. For a lot of our people, this is a weekly job. This is several times a week. This is a few times a day. For Brandy, this is as close to 24/7 as it can be. I'm constantly calling her at work and bugging her about a myriad of things, because we got so many things going on in the AFA, but Brandy gives this 100%, and it's much appreciated. Sarah says, Brandy, you have an incredibly strong connection to your ancestors. Could you speak on that and how you impart that to your children and plan to impart that eventually to your grandchildren?
Yes. So I have a very, very strong ancestral connection. My family is very proud of who they are, where they come from, their struggles, their triumphs. We tell stories of our families as far back as the origin of the family name itself, because the family, on my mom's side, the family name's only 7 generations old. And there's stories from there. We have books and volumes and, oral tales of the great adventures of our family. And we're taught that from a very young age. We're taught to be proud of our last name. We are taught to be worthy of our last name. And that's always built a very, very strong connection with all of these people that I've heard about my entire life, both on my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family. They're both very much like that. And I've done that with my children. My children never met my grandparents, who were very, very, very close to me. but they know their names. They know all of the good stories. They know all of the hilarious stories. They know all of the scary stories. We talk about them constantly, and we don't talk about them as if they're gone. We talk about as if all I have to do is pick up the phone and they can verify this story. They're still here. And that is the strongest connection that I've been able to pass on to my children, are the stories that I've been taught, are the stories that I've been told. I mean, I can tell you stories about my great grandmother, and how her family reacted when she cut her hair off, and it was hilarious and horrific all at the same time. But oral tradition is not a dead art. Oral tradition still lives within our people, and it lives in telling the stories of your ancestors, teaching those to your children so that your family's never forgotten, and involving them in some sort of daily practice, whether it is giving a gift to the ancestors, lighting a candle, lighting incense. Toasting an ancestor at dinner is a big deal. A lot of people overlook that as something silly. It's not. If it's your great grandma's birthday, dang it, write it on the calendar. And when you're having dinner, toast your grandmother at dinner and set her a plate. It's as simple as that. Just write them down. Just because they're gone doesn't mean you can't still celebrate the birthday or a special anniversary or something along the line. Invite them to dinner, literally, and toast them and tell their story. So yeah, oral tradition, keep the oral tradition strong. That's my best recommendation for passing this information on.
So Travis asks, what would both of you say to those sitting on the fence? Brandi, what would you say to fence sitters?
I don't know how appropriate it is, but the longer you straddle the damn fence, the more your bits are going to hurt. So do yourself a favor and get off the fence. Pick a side. Any side.
You know, I was going to make a joke about that too. I think I was going to say, ouch. Yeah,
Get off the fence.
Life is short. You know, I'm again with my old manisms, but man, since I hit 40, I start reflecting on things differently. But life is short. All the time that you spend on the fence is time that you're not doing something, you're not living passionately. There is, there's times and situations where neutrality on something is a strategically sound thing to do. There's no glory in neutrality. There is honor and glory and dignity in picking what you think is the best thing and the thing that you most believe in, and going at it with your whole heart and your whole soul and giving it your all. And even if it turns out in the wash that you lose or that you rethink it and you're wrong or whatever, you at least have to respect the passion of that. That's something that I think is amazing. But the person that doesn't commit to one side or the other and just kind of waits and, goes with what's easy, there's no glory in that. There's no honor in that. If you're sitting on the fence, for your sake, for your kids' sake, for your ancestors' sake, figure out what you think is right, and if it's the right thing to do, like the Odenshoff flag says, do right and fear no one. If you're on the fence, get off the fence. Pick the side that you care about. I hope that's, I assume the question is about joining the AFA. Yeah, join the AFA. That's obviously what I'm going to advocate for you to do. But you know what? If you genuinely believe with your whole heart that what we are doing is wrong and heinous, and you are 1,000% opposed to us, then, square up and do whatever you're going to do. I respect that too. I don't like it. I don't think it's wise, but I can at least, respect it under the right circumstances. But pick a side, be your whole self, live boldly. And I think that's advice for anybody. Live boldly and do what you know to be right, even if it's scary or even if it's uncomfortable. Josh says, good evening, sir and ma'am. Could we pick your brain or your minds for your advice and wishes for the folk to realize our best future? What does that ideal future look like to you? Brandi, what advice do you have for our folk to actualize, and what is your ideal future look like?
My ideal future is where our folk in our church are happy, healthy, and whole, united together, good times and in bad, where we can all put our differences aside and move forward in the same direction. And we do a good job of that now, but just as, growing and calling full calm that we can all be happy and whole, healthy. My best advice for that is to always be the example. Even if you're not a member of leadership, you're still an example for the gods. You should still be living in a way to take their notice and to give them honor. If you act a fool, the gods take notice of that too. So I would say always be the best that you can be for yourself. Improve yourself so that you can help improve others. It's my best advice.
All right, so kind of two parts. My advice for folk to realize their best selves. Pick something every day and be better at it. We all of us can be better at so many different things. But what you want is for tomorrow's you to add up to more than today's you. Be better, be a little bit stronger, a little bit faster, a little bit leaner, a little bit more swole, a little bit smarter, a little bit better, a little bit wiser. Know something that you didn't know. Learn a language, learn anything, but make that progress. And for a lot of reasons. First, I want all our people to be better than they currently are. I always will want that. But also, it is so helpful for you mentally. It's helpful in whatever thing that you've become better at. It is, it should be a driving motivation of you for your children and for your ancestors to be the very best of your line that you can be and the best example for the future that you can be. But yeah, be the best version of you can be. And the other thing is get on the team. Our people have a very toxic trait of balkanizing into the smallest little subgroups possible and making themselves irrelevant. Don't be irrelevant. Get on the team, work together with others who are moving, in the general direction you're trying to go. If your standard is people have to be 100% up to whatever idea you have in your head, you will always find reasons that they're not at 100%. Shoot, take 85. If you can find a group of people that are 85% of where you want to go, cool. Get behind that and push with your whole heart and your whole strength to make that successful. If our people did that and we stood together, if we stand together, there is nothing that's out of our reach. There's nothing that stands in our way. But there's strength in standing together. What does our ideal future look like? It depends on how far out you push that. I know Steve McNallen's always talked about, us being able to, as white people and as Asatru are, to colonize the stars and escape our solar system and, have this intergalactic, Asatru planets and stuff. And I think that'd be awesome. In a more digestible future, for us to continue this to where we are strong and we are a venerable institution for our folk, in our grandchildren's time, in our great-grandchildren's time, so that this is established and it stands the test of time and it stands strong. So that, in the coming generations, there's not a question of what Asatru is. And that there's not a question of that the AFA defines what Asatru is and is the source of what Asatru is. Having HOFs, certainly in every state, but having HOFs throughout the United States and having HOFs around the world. More and more of our people coming home. And it depends how far you want to push that future out there. In a perfect world, if all of the sons and daughters of Europa came home to Asatru, that's the ideal future. The ideal future is we could have a state that is Asatru, and that there wasn't a separation between our people and our faith and things that way. But that's a future that's really far off. As far as a next generation or the generation after future, having a strong institution to where we have consistent numbers of graduating classes from the Asatru Academy of people that were raised in this and are raising their children in this. I think that's the real test of time. And we're starting to see the fruition of some of that. We're starting to have some second generation AFA members. We're, with babies, we're having kind of a third generation of Asatru come around with babies and little children being raised in our faith. So we're getting there, but that's what I've got on it. Nick asks, Nick Salo asks, Salo, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, Nick, I apologize. He asked, hey, you guys, when are you coming to visit Colorado? Nick, you guys are doing awesome stuff in Colorado. I'm watching that grow. I knew there was potential there. It just needed you guys to fan that flame and make it happen. I don't know. I don't have any big Colorado plans. Colorado is one of those kind of out of the way places to go unless there's a big destination thing to do. So I think it depends on, if you guys have something big that you're hosting there. I suppose Colorado's a long way. I'm thinking I've done the drive there back when we used to have Thorfest there for a couple of years. It's probably about a 16-hour drive, I think, for me. So it's not like it's real convenient or right around the corner, but, I would certainly love to come see what you guys are up to. I just don't have any immediate plans on it. What about you, Brandi? When are you going to go visit Colorado?
Sometime maybe next year. We'll see what next year brings. We'll see what 2024 brings for Brandi. And then I'll answer that question.
Fair enough. Tune in the future for updates. Bruce asks, Matt and Brandi, is there a specific bloat that you have been a part of that has impacted you more than all of the others? Brandi, is there a particular bloat you want to tell them about?
Yeah, there's been a couple of them that I thought were really, really powerful, or I had a really amazing experience. The most profound for me was probably the bloat at the dedication of Baldurs House, because it was so emotional. The leadership was literally in tears during the dedication of Baldurs House. So that was just amazing and powerful, and it meant a lot. The Odin's bloat at Midsummer a couple years ago, not this past summer, but the year before, that Matt did was amazing. And I think I was one of the horn bearers for that bloat. And if you haven't seen Matt do an Odin's bloat, you need to, because it's going to be moving and powerful. But to actually be part of the energetic exchange of that, as either the horn bearer or somebody that's assisting him or even handing him things, Matt literally is like a ball of electricity when he does bloat. And you feel part of that, you feel that when you're helping with that. So that was really awesome. One of the really beautiful bloats I was part of recently was the Feast of the Einherjar bloat in Oklahoma. That was a really beautiful bloat, very symbolic, very powerful. And Nathan did a really good job with that bloat. So, see, those are my top threes.
I've been able to be part of so many bloats, and I'm really, really lucky in that. there's a lot that have been super powerful. Brandi mentioned the Baldurs House dedication, and that was such an emotional day. I think that's the picture. The picture that we're using to advertise this show was taken that day, or at least that weekend.
It was taken that day. Yep.
It was just, I think that for the people there, for the people that are so invested in us getting these Hoffs and on making these Hoffs amazing, and with that project, they're all of our Hoffs, but the people who are actually, in the fire with it, there's a special sense of accomplishment that goes with that. And I think it's different at each of them. And they all have a different power to them. I'm trying to think, that one was super powerful. One that was very powerful to me was the dedication of Thor's Hoff. And it was, it's almost 3 years ago now. And it was something that I had committed to. And it was a whole bunch of extra people involved in it too. But as far as a bloat that really was important to me personally, we had gotten, so this was happening in 2020. We had gotten Odin's Hoff in 2015. And when I became Asatru in 2016, I tried to really put my shoulder to the wheel and make stuff happen to where we could get Odin's Hoff paid off. And then it became time to get that second Hoff, and I made a commitment to do that. But at that point, being in the driver's seat on a project like that, I was untested. And I made a commitment to do that. And it was, it's a lot harder. There's a lot more involved in getting a Hoff than one may think until you do it. So that was such an important make or break commitment that I made, because I'd gone before the gods. I've gone before Thor and promised him a temple that I was going to make happen for him. And I promised that to all of you guys, but I promised that to Thor himself. And, now is the time of put up or shut up. And after a lot of struggle and a lot of, making it happen, and we finally, that was mine. Odin's Hoff was something that the McNallans were so influential in doing and making happen. But Thor's Hoff was the one that was under my watch to see if I could do that and I could make that happen. And it was so powerful to be at a bloat like that, and to, on behalf of the AFA, to give that to Thor. And that was really special. And I've been able to do that with Baldurs House, with Njord's Hoff, and in a way with Odin's Hoff, because we did a rededication. It originally wasn't dedicated to Odin, and I was able to do that. But it's a really special, and it's such a unique and different thing. But that Thor's Hoff one, that was my first one on, in my name I was able to do. And that meant a lot. I've told you guys the bloat that impacted me the most was Winter Nights 2016 with Pat Hall, and she did a DCear bloat, and called upon our female ancestors. And my grandma had passed in 2001, I believe. 2001, and we closed our eyes, and we asked for our DCear to be in the circle with us. And I called on my grandmother and invited her to be there with me. And, I closed my eyes, could literally feel exactly what it was like the last time that I saw my grandma and I gave her a hug. I mean, I could feel her old lady body just like I was giving her a hug. And because, you know, she was shorter than me and she had old lady hair product or whatever, I could smell what her hair smelled like when, you know, when I'd give her a hug and her head's on my chest and she's, you know, yay tall. It was the most visceral thing, and it's really silly. I've told you guys personally on this broadcast this story probably 5 times. I can't do it without tearing up because it connected with me that viscerally, that connection is there beyond telling the story. But yeah, that impacted me, and it impacted other people there too. There was a bunch of us men there that just went off into the woods there and were sobbing like little kids because it affected us so much. That was super powerful, and I was so lucky I was able to be there for that blow. Antonio, while talking about Hoffs, if Michigan was having a Hoff built, I always wondered a good, great name for it. So we may get to a point where that's a thing. Right now, we have a plan on how we're naming our Hoffs as they come up. And our first 12 are spoken for. They're going to be in a specific order to our gods. And Nick, quick on the draw, had that scrolling across the bottom there. I appreciate you, Nick. So yeah, so we have that order if you can see it. If you can't see it, Odin, Thor, Baldur, Njordr, Freyr, Tyr, Bragi, Heimdallr, Vidar, Vali, Ullr, and Forseti. Those are going to be our first 12. So if Michigan got a Hoff within that time, it would really be, you know, where it fell on that. Now, there's no prospect right now of making a Hoff in Michigan. We're lacking some infrastructure there that we'd need to have first. So that would have to happen. But I don't know. Our naming, so there's a couple of things when we get a Hoff. We have the dedication, the deity that we're dedicating it to figured out beforehand. But it's important to us that the animal that represents that Hoff on the flag and on the crossed gabling, it's important to us that gets, you know, input from the local, certainly the local Gothi and the local folks there that it matters to. We want it to have that local connection. It's also important, you know, choosing the colors. So I don't know what that would look like. And that's one of those things I'd be asking my leaders in Michigan or in that area, you know, because if it was in Michigan, it would probably strategically be close to some other states there to where we could get, you know, more than just one state would be the congregation for this Hoff. So we'd ask the folks there, you know, to help decide on an animal, help decide on a hammer shape for the sign, and help decide for a color scheme. And I'm curious what that would be. And I think there's so many ifs on that. It would all depend. But a lot of that has to do with the people that are going to make that area Hoff worthy. And I think they'll do a lot to define what that looks like and what shape that comes in. Trent, Witan Brandy, can you explain the importance of women in the AFA acting as frith weavers?
Sure. So the women of the Asatru Folk Assembly, and especially the women in leadership, one of our primary duties as women is to maintain and weave the frith between each other, the men, our families, our children, the communities, the districts. It is something that is inherently feminine. It is something that we excel at. It is something that is a gift that most women are born with. We have the ability to diffuse emotion, stress, anxiety, bad feelings, bad energy. We can diffuse that. We have a Frithful nature, a frithful touch. As Githia Erickson explains, that's part of being a horn bearer for the AFA, is your touch is making sure that everything that is in that well is frithful. That is part of our job. We have that special energy, that special quote unquote magic about the feminine power. It's a real thing. And the biggest part of that is the frith weaving. It is the weaving of relationships. It is the weaving of families, friendships, pairing couples up for marriage, whatever it is, a woman's touch makes it better. That's just the way it is. So that's our job, especially as our female leadership. We are there to support you. We are there in good times, bad times, ugly times, when you're fighting with your sister, when you're fighting with your brother, anytime. That's what we do. We want to make sure that we have healthy relationships and healthy families, because that makes a healthy folk and a healthy church.
What are some of your favorite examples of industriousness in the AFA, Brandi?
Sheila McNallen. Sheila McNallen is my hero. I want to be like her when I grow up. She's amazing. I will forever be chasing her, trying to live up to her and what she has already done. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but Sheila McNallen is my Githia, and she is my role model. Also, the Alshira Gothi, and not just the Alshira Gothi, but the Alshira Gothi's wife, Mandy. Mandy does so many things that people don't even know about. I mean, she truly is the Lady of Victory, because she's behind the scenes making that happen, more than any of you guys would ever know. And Matt, the Alshira Gothi, has a restless energy, which is the reason we are so successful. Most of the time, if something's not going on, he doesn't know what to do with his hands. He wants to do something all the time. And he's got such a restless spirit. There's always on the go. I would also have to say Dan and Heather Young as well. They are always doing something, and Dan will tell you he's chasing me. So I'm chasing Sheila, and Dan's chasing me. So, but our leadership in general is industrious. They work so hard behind the scenes for everything. So I can't thank all of them enough. It's just, we have so many of them, it would be hard to list them all, but the leadership of the AFA is the epitome of industriousness.
So I think Brandi's saying stuff about my wife because she sees the next question coming up. I don't know if that's the case or not. For the record, when I was talking about top three, Sheila was the other leg of that trifecta there. So yeah, I think Sheila's absolutely a really good choice on that. And one of the cool, just a point of note for everybody, Sheila is not only top three of our doers in the AFA right now, but she's easily been, I'm trying to think. She has certainly been in the top three, sometimes in the top two of AFA doers in the entire time that I've been in the Asatru Folk Assembly. But Sheila has been making this happen since 95. She's been there since the beginning, making all of these things happen. She has been such a doer this entire time. So it's not just how industrious she currently is, which is phenomenal, but she has maintained that industriousness over 28 years and counting. And that's huge. Brandi, obviously, that's why she's on the show, and I've gushed about that tonight. So I think that Daniel and Heather are a really good example. I think it's also Ashley McStalker really impresses me with her industriousness, especially on the food pantry at Baldurs House and making that happen. But behind the scenes, and you guys would have no way of knowing this, but Ashley is very diligent in training up new folk builders, and she does really awesome at that. I think she puts in a whole lot of work. I know a bunch of people down at Njordshof do, but Mike Joyner specifically, I know he's putting in a ton of work down there for Njord, for our folk, for our gods. He's doing awesome. And something else I think is important on industriousness. Two others. First, I could do this literally all night. We have amazing, amazing people. But the producer of this program, Nick Rice, is super industrious, but he's also lightning fast with that industry, which is very much appreciated. He's got a skill set that most of us don't possess when it comes to technology and things. One of the things Brandi talks about, my restless energy. So when I decide I need something to happen, it needs to happen like now. It needs to happen minutes ago. And the fact that it didn't is frustrating. So having somebody, and the other thing is, I don't want to be a jerk. If it's something I can just do myself, I'll do it. There's some things that I can't do. And a lot of our tech stuff is stuff that I can't do. But man, Nick jumps on it quick. And also on the tech note, I want to mention Cliff. Witan Clifford Erickson his pace is not as breakneck as some of the other people that we mentioned, but his longevity is. He's been there being a huge leg of industry in the AFA since, certainly, I mean, he was one of the first, like, on my Witan guys making stuff happen, partnering with me on all the way through my administration. But probably the last 3 years, at least 2 years of Steve's time as Altaria Gothi, Cliff was top 4, at least, if not top 3 for a while there. I mean, he was really putting in work there for a long time, and his work has been steady over a lot of these years. And unfortunately, so much of it is tech stuff that, may not get the attention that it really deserves. But I think that he's definitely somebody I want to mention about industriousness.
I also want to say a thank you and a shout out to Nathan Erlinson for moving mountains of snow so I don't have to. And also to Sarah Alt, who is maintaining that Baldurs House website and doing a bunch of other stuff behind the scenes. And that's awesome. If Nick can put up that Baldurs House link, that would be awesome, because that website is what it is because of Nick and Sarah. So appreciate those two very much.
So our next question comes from my wife, Mandy. Brandi, how did you get so gorgeous?
Thanks, Mandy. It's because my mama gave me red hair and I have BFFs like you to feed my ego about it.
So real talk on this, you always look really good on these, Brandi. It's like, it's a thing. I get a lot of feedback on that.
Thank you.
Monica asks, how important is a woman's position in Asatru? Brandi, do you want to speak to that?
Very important, because it's half of Asatru. Men and women most definitely have their very, very important but separate roles in the religion of Asatru. Men have a very different role than the women do. The beautiful part of that is that we come together in worship. So there's things that we do together, but there's so many beautiful aspects to femininity in Asatru. A lot of those things have to do with Frith that we've already talked about, but also the sacredness of a lot of the things that we do. The preparation of space is something that I always love bringing my women into. The calling of our folk is something I love to have our women do, because it is the sound of a woman's voice calling out over the winds and trees and airs and mountains will call a man home from battle and call a child home from play. The voice of a woman is strong and powerful. We have so many unique feminine gifts that benefit our folk and delight our gods, that the importance is really, really hard to try to explain in an 8-hour podcast, let alone just a few minutes. But I definitely recommend reaching out to myself, Githia Sheila McNallen, Githia Katie Erickson, and Githia Anna Pord. If you have any questions specifically about women's roles or women's practice in Asatru, we also do have a women-only call once a month where we do discuss women's mysteries, things that are innate and inherent to us as women in the faith, and get a hold of folk builders Sarah Alt and Christine Dumas on that.
All right. Either a sig rune or a lightning bolt, my eyes are failing me on what it is, asks, are there any events going on at Baldurs House this month? Could I visit the place? I'm not a member. It's a good Brandy question as well.
We always have events. Those can be found on the website. There's events every single month. If you are not a member, you need to be vetted for and accompanied by a member to the Hof if you are coming for any of our events. If you just want to see the place, we do give tours of the building between 10 a.m. and noon on the third Saturday of every month. And you can tour the building and speak to the folk builders if you're not a member. If you do want to attend services or events, you must be with a member and vetted for prior to coming.
Yeah, and I don't know your circumstance, but I want to, kind of mention to everybody watching this, and I want to make a point to do this more often. So to everybody watching this, if you like this, or I say watching because I'm watching on the video. I know some of you guys listen to it as a podcast, just audio. Anybody hearing this, though, if you like what we're doing, if you share our beliefs, I would invite you to get on the team and try to join us, join the AFA and become a member. If you're not, ask the question, why? I'm saying you may have a real good reason why, but I'm wondering what that reason is. And if you can't find it, I would encourage you to try to join. And if you want to just scope us out first, that's great too. I think that's great for you to ask that Sigrun or Lightning Bolt. No, that's cool. I appreciate you wanting to step out and see what it's about. And it's beautiful. They've done an amazing job. Even if you have no interest, even if you're a committed Christian or whatever the situation is, if you just want to see it and check it out, she did mention the visiting hours, and check in and get vetted. And we like to show the place off because they really have done an amazing job.
We give tours all the time.
Mm-hmm. So next question, when facing hardship, do you have tips on maintaining confidence and self-esteem to remain industrious, or to remain industrious? Brandi?
Yes. So one of my big secret weapons is I am very, very highly organized in a lot of ways in my life. I have a planner. I go by my planner. My life is regimented. I've talked about this, I think, with our women, but I'm not sure if I've talked about it anywhere else. I do everything by 15 minutes. It keeps me from getting burned out. So if I'm writing for the history project, I do it for 15 minutes. I get up and hold a basket of socks. I do the dishes. I come back. I write for another 15 minutes. I go declutter something. I come back and I write. I spend 15 minutes on something because if I don't and I get writer's block, I'm not going to sit at my computer screen and curse it and get mad and frustrated and waste time. I'm going to walk away, do something else. If I think of something in the meantime, I'll write it down. And when it's time to go back to that project, I pick it up and do it. 15-minute increments. I live my life by 15 minutes. But I'm also very structured in what I do. I do the same thing at the same time every single day. I am an absolute creature of habit. I'm not afraid to admit that. So I find comfort in detail. I find comfort in logistics. So that really helps me because this gives me a sense of control and structure that I thrive in.
So it's an interesting question the way it's phrased. And let me tell you how. So when facing hardship, do I have any tips on maintaining confidence and self-esteem to remain industrious? Honestly, I don't. industriousness is what my tip is to maintain confidence and self-esteem. Whenever I'm feeling hardship, it's hard to say. So whenever I'm feeling criticized, or like I'm under a microscope, or like, whenever I'm feeling bad or I'm feeling the pressure, throwing myself into accomplishment is what helps me maintain, and it's what shores up my confidence and what shores up my self-esteem. Because if your self-esteem is based on praise, and all of us, that's a thing. If people are kissing your butt and telling you you're awesome, it's good for your self-esteem. When all of a sudden they're not, or somebody's telling you something counter to that, then it goes away in an instant. It doesn't. Compliments don't last. What lasts is accomplishment. So the more I can do to say, well, yeah, whatever you're saying, but look at this, then I have a justifiable case that I should be self-confident and that I should have esteem about myself. And I don't just mean that in AFA stuff. I mean it personally or anything else. Doubling down on getting stuff done is huge. And so, she's a little bit noisy right now. But another thing, and she's wiggly too. So, anyways, hope she got on camera for a second there. I'm sure her noises did. But that's another thing that shores me up under adversity, is remembering who's watching. It's so often it's easier to give up, or to buckle, or to, hide and to not push through things that are difficult. And I try to remember the people that are watching me and that are gonna learn from this, or gonna judge by this. And I want that little girl to be proud of me, and I want her to learn from what I'm doing. And I want my ancestors to be proud of me. And I want my gods to be proud of me. And so sometimes that means being uncomfortable sometimes it means being uncomfortable. Sometimes that means pushing through when it's difficult. But, and the other thing, I guess the third tip on it is, I try to conceive what this is going to look like on the other side of it and where I want to have been. Ducking stuff makes this afternoon easy, or tomorrow easy. But looking back on it 2 years from now, what am I going to wish that I had done? Because it's really easy to make very short-sighted decisions because they're easier right now, but they're things you're going to regret a year from now or 5 years from now. I don't want to be that guy that sits on his deathbed, hopefully a long time from now, and thinks all the things he wishes he would have done different, or he wishes he would have done more of. So that motivates me too. So, a question for both of you. Hindsight is always 20/20. Looking back at the Baldurs House media storm, or anything else in the AFA's past, knowing what you know now, would you do anything different if you could? I think it's a really interesting question. Brandi, what are your thoughts?
Would I do anything different? That's a really interesting question. I don't think I would have done anything different. One thing I would have done was put tires on my car earlier, because it was icy drive from North Dakota to Minnesota. And a couple of them were scary, so I think I would have put tires on my car earlier than I did. But as far as what we did and how we did it, no. I really don't think I would have. But knowing what I know now, I would have savored it more, rather than been in such a rush. And what I mean by that is I would have taken more pictures. I would have taken more pictures and I would have documented more things. And because it went so fast. I mean, I know that for everybody else, it seemed like it took forever to get Baldurs House open. But for us, it was so fast and it went by so fast. You know, I would have spent that extra hour in the hot tub. I would have had that extra breakfast instead of driving straight home on Sunday morning. I think I would have done that a little bit more.
Asking me these questions is, I guess, not dangerous, but it exposes me to the fact that I overthink these things. I'm sitting here, yes, obviously there's things that if I knew then what I know now, that I would have done differently. But I'm really, really happy thinking on this because there's not a lot of big ones. There's so knowing the end result, obviously there's people that have let me down that if I knew now that I wouldn't have trusted, or I wouldn't have trusted in certain ways or with certain things. But looking back on it, it's not a regret because it was the right thing to do at the time with the knowledge that I had at the time. Like, I don't look back on it and be like, man, that was wrong of me to do it. Working under the things that I had at the time, I think that, I stand by a lot of those things. But obviously there's some people that claim to hold a certain values and claim to be about stuff that turned out not to be. And I would not have put responsibility or faith in, a number of people that way. And I think that's a thing. And to be honest, and along with that, when we were fairly early on, when we had a lot of groups involved with us in Pennsylvania, we were fed information that turned out not to be true, and it caused a rift between us and one of our kindreds out there, the Svenfilken. And if I had it all to do over again, I realize now that the information we had wasn't honest, and I do regret us parting ways with those guys in the way that we did. I don't, I wish I could take that back. If they're listening now, I'm sorry. I apologize. But yeah, it turns out we were listening to some people that turned out not to be trustworthy. So that was a thing. But I think, we've been fortunate. I think we've been blessed in a way that I don't think there's a whole lot of big ones that I would change. Certainly not from my time leading the AFA. Next question is, what do you believe happens to non-Asatru when they die? Depends on who we're talking about. I think that each race of people goes to their, depending on their situation, goes to their gods and their ancestors. It's not up to me to define that for them or exactly what that looks like. And I don't presume to have strong opinions on, what an African gentleman, what happens to him when he dies and how he relates to his gods and his ancestors. But I assume that they go to, like I said, to their gods and ancestors. If we're talking about another white person that dies, reality is real, whether you want it to be or not. So I believe that those people, again, go to our gods and ancestors. And if they spent their life as a devoted Christian, then they're probably in for a surprise in the afterlife on how that works out. But I think that the most universal right answer to your question is those people go to their ancestors. And I think that's comforting, and I think that's a truth of humanity, of where people go. And I think as far as interacting with the higher powers, with the gods and the heroes, I think that, I'm curious about that. It's one of those things, I always imagine that when you die, you get this, almost like a video game, you get the end of the game wrap up where all the fog of war disappears and you can know the answers to all these questions that you didn't know when you were around, and all these things. I hope that's the case. And I hope that we, kind of get a sit down and a review and know things that we don't know now. But yeah, I don't think that, a person not dying Asatru prevents them from being welcomed by their ancestors. I think they may have some remedial studies to do on the other side of the veil, if that's the case. But yeah, I think that you go to the ancestors of your people, no matter what your faith is. I think that is a truth, and that truth occurs. Do you have any thoughts on that, Brandi?
Nope, I agree with you on that. I think you're going to return to your ancestors, despite what you call it. That's more than likely where we're going to end up. I don't really have anything to add on that.
Okay. So Cody says, Brandi, you're a heck of a dancer. Where did you pick it up?
I'm a heck of a dancer. I like to polka. I'm a big polka fan. I am one of those geeks, and that's okay. I've actually been dancing since I was little. My grandparents danced, my parents danced, my uncles danced. I've got probably on both sides of my family 50 some cousins, so there's a lot of weddings and a lot of opportunities to dance, and that's what we did. We also did it on Saturday nights at the German Hungarian or wherever we were at. I don't know. It was just a cool thing to do. There's not much else to do in North Dakota but dance and have a good time.
There you go. Sarah says, Brandi, could you talk about your love of fika and its importance at every Baldurs House event?
Yes, fika is coffee. Fika is 10 o'clock at every Baldurs House event. Everybody is required to stop what they're doing, including myself, and sit down and have a cup of coffee and a delightful snack and have a conversation with your folk. It is time to bond and build frith, and take a minute, 10, 15 minutes, and stop working.
All right, so we've got one more question in the line here, and John Smith asks, so just how did Matt gain leadership in the AFA again? Well, so when my very first Midsummer, as a matter of fact, in 2010, Steve McNallen had announced that sometime soon he was going to step back and retire from leadership. And he had announced a gentleman named Brad as his successor whenever that happened. And so that was going to happen then, and he said that. Years went on, and there was no real advancement on that or what the timeline was for that. But Brad was very much the second in command and was groomed for that position. Yeah, so trying to think of how to explain the timeline on that. So anyways, that was the situation. And then over the next few years, my position in the AFA really advanced. When my first Midsummer I went there as a folk builder from Alaska. And I took my folk builder oath at that event. And by 2012, I had become, at the 2012 Midsummer, at that same event 2 years later, I got my ordination and I became a Gothi. And at that time, I was also figuring out the timeline on this is a little tricky. I think before I was officially a Gothy, I was the assistant folk builder coordinator under Brad. And eventually, as Brad got more into the position of Steve's successor, he became what was called the chief of operations, I believe at the time, sometimes referred to as chief of staff. And when he did that, around the time I became a Gothy, I also was the folk builder coordinator. And the way it worked at the time is we had Steve as the Alsheri Gothy, and then we had a board of directors. And that functioned much like our current Witan functions. And when I became the folk builder coordinator, I was on that board. And, you know, by sometime between 2012, 2013, I think either officially or unofficially, I was number 3 in the AFA. And that kind of kept on until very quickly before Steve stepped back. So I'm just trying to think of the artful way to put stuff. I want to be as, you know, open and honest with things as I can be, but also don't want to talk badly about people. Things did not work out well with Brad. He was going through some personal things. It was really hard for me because he and I were very close. But he was going through some personal, spiritual things and got into a spot where he was really not functioning at a very high rate for a couple of years there. And towards the end there, that just became too much. And in the early spring of 2016, and this was all happened lightning fast. Steve had relieved Brad of his position, and because I was kind of number 3, you know, by default, I was in that number 2 spot with Brad gone. And then within a month, Steve had gone from removing Brad from his spot to going ahead and wanting to fulfill what he'd said at 2010 and retire and step back from active leadership of the AFA. And so, yeah, that was spring of, that discussion was going on shortly after Ostara of 2016. And we talked about it. The board of directors talked about it. Steve and Alan and I and Pat had a conversation. And initially it was like a trifecta for a short time there, where it was me as like the first among equals, but I also had Alan and Pat there to assist me in that. And that was kind of, Pat and Alan were kind of my proto Witan, I'd say, for a few months there. And by the end of that year, it kind of sorted itself out to where, you know, Pat had gone her separate ways with us. Alan wanted to, it worked out to where I had the full Alsheri Gothy spot, and Alan was then on the Witan that I formed initially and still is to this day. But that's how that all took place. And then I became installed as Alsheri Gothy officially at midsummer of that year, midsummer of 2016 at Odenshoff. And yeah, that's broad strokes how that worked. A couple of more questions have popped up. Can we talk about the 3 new days? So I did not create 3 new days, just so we know, I do not possess the power to add days to the year. I wish I could. But this year officially, and I haven't really talked about this a lot yet, but it's not a secret, and I did assign this for some future talks. there are three heroes of Asatru that I want to celebrate with days of remembrance. And I've been thinking on this for a time. And it's really important to honor the people that have paved the way to get where we are and that have been influential and, honorable and worth celebrating in our faith. And so the three folks that I'd like to celebrate and have the AFA have days of remembrance for from here on out. Now I got to look at what days we assigned to those, because we were comfortable up to this point. We had 12, and they were all on the 9th. These ones we have assigned different days to, because there's no more 9ths to do, seeing as how I said I can't add days to the year. So I'm looking back here at what those dates were, but to not have dead air, the thought process, I want to honor John Gibbs Bailey, who also was known as Hoskuld and was one of the founders of the Odinic Rite and a very influential Asatruer back in, I think, as early as the 1930s. And then John Ewell, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, also an Englishman, also one of the founding fathers of the Odinic Rite way back when. And both of those gentlemen combined were the folks that came up with the original 9 noble virtues. They were practicing Asatru when, it was odd and obscure to practice in the 60s or the 70s. These gentlemen were practicing very early on in England, and they got together and formed the Odinic Rite in the 70s. And again, that was done kind of in a bubble without any other interaction with other folks who at the same time were re-embracing our gods. And so another gentleman around that time that was re-embracing our gods was an Icelander named Sveinbjorn Bjornsson, the founder of the Asatruer Félagið in Iceland. And I think that organization has gone radically askew, and we don't currently support the things those folks are involved with. But from all that I can tell and from all that I'm aware of, Sveinbjorn was a pious man that believed very much in our gods, believed very much in the metaphysics and the lore of our people, and wanted to go back to that. And to bring his people back to that. And that's absolutely worth honoring and celebrating. And there's a story about how when Sveinbjorn and some of his lieutenants at the time wanted to get official recognition from the Icelandic government, they had to talk to, I think, a Christian clergyman that was involved in some of that decision making at the time. And they weren't taken seriously. And Iceland is not particularly known for its thunderstorms and its things of that nature. And there was a lightning strike right at that time that disabled government buildings and stuff. And it was a pretty standout astronomical occurrence when the government didn't take him seriously. I think that's kind of a special sign. And so I want to honor those men. I was looking at the days, and I can't figure them out right now because I can't find where I wrote it down. But one of them is in the end of April. I think April 21st is what we were doing to honor Hoskuld. I believe Sveinbjorn was July the 4th, and I believe Stobo was October the 4th. So don't quote me on that. It'll come out. Hopefully I got close. And I think it did. Oh, and so Nick threw on as an addition to that question, to let you guys know that we are doing, when we're done with our series on the noble virtues, we're going to do episodes on each of our heroes for a while and alternate that with the Swan episodes. So that is the game plan. And we've already got a number of AFA folk builders, and I think some Gothar even, that have signed up to talk to us about those folks. And so I'm excited about those. Yeah, so we got that. And then the next question, currently the last question, but some may pop up while we're answering it. Does Founder McNallen still got power decision-making in the AFA, or is he more like an advisor at this point? Thanks. Steve is retired, and I appreciate that. It would be really awkward if there was a sharing of powers, and it would be difficult. So Steve stepped completely back. He is still an active participant. He shows up. He's certainly active in the AFA, and we love him. We love having him there. But he handed over full authority to me as All's Harrier Gothi, and he's been very supportive in that, and I appreciate it. If Steve wanted to and he had things important to him that he wanted to reach out and talk to me about, absolutely, that's a conversation I would have at any point in time with him. But he's been very graceful to not armchair quarterback my All's Harrier Gothian. He and Sheila both have been extremely, extremely supportive and very, very gracious in that. But no, he doesn't officially have decision-making power at this point, but he's Steve McNallen. If he has something that he wants to say, I think that we'll all listen, and he's immensely respected. Looks like we got a couple questions. All's Harrier Gothi, what is different or stands out in today's AFA versus when you first joined? It's a whole different world. Shoot. We are easily twice as big as we were when I first joined. We are almost twice as big as when I became All's Harrier Gothi. But we are certainly over twice as big as when I first became a member of the AFA. Huge difference, obviously, is our Hoffs. We've got 4 temples to our gods now. When I joined, that was still a distant pie in the sky. Maybe someday we could possibly have a Hoff, maybe in the distant future. And those are, the first one became a reality, and we've got 3 more on top of it. Sigerheim obviously is a huge thing, but that still is a whole bunch of potential. And right now it's raw land. So I'll celebrate that a little bit more. You asked me this in a few years. The Asatru Academy also, we're not quite done with our first academic year, so it's hard to really claim that as a huge difference, but it certainly is starting to be and will be, and it's a huge difference for those families that are involved in it currently. But that brings me to families. When I first joined, there's a lot of dudes. There's a lot of single guys. That has changed tremendously at any of our events. The guys are almost always outnumbered by the women and the children. Again, we got ladies around. It's not just, a couple eccentric, gothic, larger ladies. It is a whole different caliber of women that come out to our events. And children and families. And I think we had north of 50 babies born last year, and that number goes up every single year. And that's been one of the most beautiful and amazing things, is seeing all the growth of families, mine included. When I first joined the AFA, we had one national event, and that was at Midsummer. Now we have a quote unquote national event at each of our 4 Hoffs. and LC Fest, and usually there's, you know, another that will get thrown in that counts, but we have events all over the place. When I first started, events in general were, you know, we had things, but I guess I can't say that in this context. We had stuff that people did, but certainly not where it is now, to where you look and on any of our calendars, any given weekend, there's, you know, 10, 15, 20 different moots and activities going on with AFA members. When I first joined, I think we had members in 3 other countries. Now we have members in 14 other countries. Our membership, like I said, it's grown and it's spread out over the country. When I first joined, the AFA was very largely a West Coast phenomenon, and there's members scattered different places, but it was very West Coast heavy. Now we're all across the United States, and I mentioned our international members. And if you look at the distribution in the United States, the majority of AFA members in the United States are east of the Mississippi River now. And that's without losing people in the West. It's just seen a tremendous uptick in people in the East. Man, it's just so many different ways we're just functioning at such a higher capacity. We've been very, very fortunate and very, very blessed. Not sure if it's been asked already. I was an hour late. That's okay. We appreciate you coming in. We have super long shows, and I don't expect everybody to sit there for, you know, we're almost at the 3-hour mark. But what grades are currently available for the Academy? So that's an interesting question. Currently, only kindergarten. But and so for everybody listening, and not just for Shannon, so it's in case you guys are unfamiliar. We started the very first academic year of the Asatru Academy last September. And that has been awesome. The kids have been doing great. The families have been participating. It's been really, really good. And we're committed at that point. I wanted to make sure before we launched this that everybody was 100% committed. We're going to follow that class, and at the very, very least, we're going to have their next grade ready for them each year. So we'll grow with them all the way up through when they're graduating in 2035, I believe. But that said, we want to do better than that. And I've been assured, and I've heard some different numbers, but I've been assured for certain that this next go around, this next September when we take enrollment, we will have kindergarten, first and second grade available. So be looking for that if you have kids in those age brackets. That will be up and open and getting people in September. If you have kids that you want to transfer into it, even at this point in the year, there was just a notification that we're taking these people anytime. So if you've got kids that are kindergartners that you want involved in the Asatru Academy, please do not hesitate. We would love to have those kids there and help educate the future of our folk and our church. And I think that's that. Thank you guys so much. There've been a lot of really good questions tonight. I appreciate you guys participating. I appreciate you guys listening to us. I say this all the time when Tony asks, how I'm doing, but I look forward to these every week. It's literally me talking to my very best friends. So it's really cool for me, and I'm glad that you guys participate and are here to listen and to ask. Brandi, thank you so much for joining us. You are a fantastic guest, and you are a testament to the concept of industriousness, and it was great having you on.
Thank you.
All right. Well, those of you that can, try to make it out to Charming of the Plow this weekend. If you're able to, I will be happy to see you there in White Springs, Florida at Njordshof. And I will be back just in time to do this next week. So till then, hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.